Hey guys, it is episode 85 of Ask Us Anything. I am Kris Jones and you are?
Chris Nash.
And in the previous two videos, we chatted about spirituality and how you don't believe in karma and I do. Then we talked about health and wellness, where you are completely over the top radical and I'm just totally, no, in reality,
Average.
We talked about how spirituality is universal and how health and wellness is key, and how our society was kind of built to make it hard to be committed to health and wellness. But you're an example of how you can make initially some small changes and then go all in, and you haven't been sick in 6 years. I mean, of course, glass, knock on glass.
No need.
No, that is aggressive. That's cool. And your energy's unbelievable. Right? And it's good energy.
And I will say, we really only scratched the surface in those topics.
I know.
So obviously, I'm passionate about both of those things, but there's plenty more to be said.
Couldn't agree more. So the final topic for this three-part series is work-life balance. And so this is one of the most common questions I get asked by people because they are either surprised or startled or don't believe that I drop my kids off at school every morning. I am at dinner every night at 5:30, and we say grace at dinner. And I take 2 to 3 family vacations a year. And I've invested in over 20 businesses, several of which I run. So people are like, how do you do it? And by the way, I'm like over the top happy with my life and my family. And unequivocally, my wife is number one, not my job. My kids are number 2, not my job. And I'll go above and beyond to make sure those things are in balance. Yep. So, but let's get your kind of quick reflection on how you think about work-life balance and some of the kind of things how you keep yourself honest.
I think in terms of the way that I think about work-life balance, one, I don't try to separate them into their buckets as much. For me, the work doesn't feel like work. So when I'm working on a project or when I'm connected to a new opportunity, it's so exciting that it doesn't feel like a job. So that's the first way that I handle that. And I really enjoy what I do. I enjoy my profession. I enjoy being just take what we're doing at LSEO, for example. I love coming to work. Mm-hmm. And I know that sounds generic on one hand. You hear a lot of people, well, actually you don't hear a lot of people say that. But if you can actually reframe what you're doing and actually love what you do on a daily basis, that's the first way I think that you get beyond this idea that you need to make it less about work and more about, not that you shouldn't have a personal life connected to that. That's super important, and you can definitely get overly obsessed on the work side of your life. But for me, that's the first thing. Is I don't think about the job like a traditional job, and I've never done that. Yeah. And I think I've kind of haven't been a traditionalist in any way as it relates to my work profession. I think being an entrepreneur has something to do with that. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I'm doing it myself. So there's a personal connection to that piece. But I think balance, without a doubt. My mom literally, we joke about it. We have this word, what's more important? And she constantly is balance, balance, balance. I had to hear it for years and years growing up. But I think the idea on the most basic level that you have to stop and smell the roses, to use the most cheesy cliche, that to me is super important. And
Interesting, yeah.
And as you're going along, you pause to reflect on what's important to make sure that you're not getting carried away in one direction. Whether it's your professional life or your personal life, one can't dominate any particular part of your life. And we're talking about spirituality, health and wellness, and now work-life balance. Those things in itself have to be in balance. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really the key. So when one thing gets a little bit off kilter, I think you can feel it in your life. One of the ways that I've managed that over time is I kind of go through phases. And let's take my exposure in public. There have been sort of times where I've dipped down and kind of gone underground and then popped back up now and been pretty vocal and out there. That to me is part of the ebb and flow that I enjoy, where I'll go through a period where I'll read 10 books in a month, and then I have to take a month off and think about what I've done and what I've read and apply it. something like that is a great example, I think, where you can't just keep doing and doing and doing and doing and doing. You have to take a step back, evaluate things, and think about them either spiritually or as it relates to family, and carve out the time. That's I think super important.
Yeah.
You got to carve out the time, make a commitment to it. Otherwise, I think sometimes you can get down one channel.
I think people, we all at times struggle to find happiness, and it's difficult to achieve it long term without creating that balance. So you think about you think about mind, body, and spirit. I would add now, some of the folks that are watching this don't have families, aren't married. You're not married. You don't have kids. Although I know that you're very close to your brother's kids. You're very close to your best friends, the Beckys and their kids, the Haydus. I'm sorry, Amy's original name was Becky. But here's my point. My point is that I would add that fourth one, which would be family and loved ones and friends. And I know when we talk about just basic balance, it's mind, body, and spirit. But I really think our successes are, you ever hear that saying, if a tree fell in the woods, would you hear it? I think that if success is nothing without sharing it with friends and family and loved ones. So anyway, having that balance between them is really what's going to lead to happiness. And when those things are out of whack, I think you've got to balance them. And there's no doubt, because when I look back on my 20s, right, I wasn't married, and I absolutely prioritized work. Right. It was all I did. And then at some point, I had a realization that, I'm no longer happy. Right, I'm in a relationship. I'm going to get married, and then of course, I eventually had kids. I need to kind of reprioritize this. So, any tips or tricks? How do you, when you feel like you're out of balance, what do you do?
Usually, I take a walk. One of the ways I think
is that connecting with your spiritual side, or is that the mind side of it? Try to get yourself back into focus.
No, I think it's actually. I almost think it's the reverse for me. Like I get overly focused. And I don't pop out often enough to do sort of a look from the top and think, okay, wait a second.
Yeah.
Like, let's not forget that, like, what's really important to you. Yeah. And so for me, like, if it's, I kind of need quiet time to do that. And that's, I think, exactly what I was describing, where I become kind of a hermit and make sure that I feel good about what I'm doing and making sure I think I'm carving out the right time. And one of the, like, you actually mentioned my brother's kids, my niece and nephew, Caden and Lily, and that's one of the really big ways that I've been able to achieve more balance, because there is a part of my life, I think, because I'm not married and at this point in my life, that I still want those things, but right now I get them through the relationship with my brother. But I think the way that I think about them is I have to take a pause, whether I'm walking my dog and kind of, with my headphones on and just relaxing. I don't relax enough. Yeah. And I don't get, you asked, we should have talked about this, but sleep for me is one of my weak points. Yeah. I do not get enough of it. I don't do it on the right schedule. And so, like, for all the preaching I do about health, to me, like, that's part of balance, and I don't get it enough, and I don't relax enough to kind of settle down. And I think that's a big important part. By the way, whether it's family time, or just personal time, I think you have to take those pauses. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, like, I don't think you can sit back and really evaluate what you need.
Again, like I said, I think it's about balancing those things, and I also think it's about prioritization. And what you make is most important, I think is really critical. Literally by readjusting and, what is your number one thing. For me, years ago, and it wasn't decades ago, it was only like 6 or 7 years ago. The first 3 or 4 years of my marriage were great, but honestly, I was still I was still running Pepper Jam. I was still very focused. I'm all over jet setting. And then it just hit me like a sonic boom, that I needed to reprioritize that if I wanted to continue to be happy, because money and things weren't what I wanted. Right. I am definitely a high achiever. I can't stop it. It's my personality. But at the end of the day, I want to be truly happy. Right. The other thing that we haven't really talked about, but is that mind side. Similar to our video on health and wellness, I don't know what happens, but, people, think about this for a second. You're in school. Everybody's in school. If you only have a high school education, you're in school for, what's the math on that? 18 years or something like that? Not quite 18 years, 15 years or 13 years, whatever it is. And then most people end up going to college. So you basically study. You invest in knowledge and what I think is a very important element of personal growth by self-educating. But then when you get out of college, you may never read another book.
Right.
For me, honestly, one of the secrets to my continued success is an obsession and a passion for continuing to grow my knowledge base and to continuing to develop skills and knowledge. So I don't know, for anybody listening to this, how do you think about that? I would challenge them. I mean, if you're not currently reading a book, and I don't care what the book is on, you need to go out and read a book. It'll help you start conversations with strangers. It'll help you connect with other people. And by the way, watching TV, I don't think checks the box.
Well, there are aspects you have to watch the right thing. There are times, and speaking of balance, there are times you should just sit down and watch something strictly for the entertainment value. Like, not everything has to be an education.
I'm okay with TV
session.
But what about this idea of making a commitment to continuing education?
Oh
I think
gosh.
the brain, the mind, remember, mind, body, spirit, and family and loved ones. I think the brain goes limp as you get older unless you exercise it.
Listen, if there's one thing that drives me more than anything in this world, it's the idea that I want to learn something every day. There is actually no stronger theme in my life than that.
Yeah.
If I don't feel like I made progress in that department, and maybe it's a little crazy, but if I don't feel like I learned something or just developed in some way as a person, I'm frustrated at the end of the day. And I'm not pretending like it doesn't happen. And I know you have the phrase like every day's a baseline. For me, that's how I define it. What have I learned that day? And if I can be a little bit better today and a little smarter or a little more, just in general, like caring or something, whatever I'm defining that moment about, like taking another step.
Sure.
For me, that is absolutely the most consistent theme in my life. So in terms of education, 100%. You don't have to, by the way, you don't have to get your book through a traditional paper version anymore, obviously. I listen to a ton of audiobooks. I listen to audiobooks when I'm walking my dog. Yeah. I listen to audiobooks when I'm working out. And I'm like, I love it because I'm doing two things at the same time. Yeah. Which just makes me feel better. But in general, like, there's so many ways to get knowledge these days. And like, everything's available. Like, you want to learn anything? Just look it up. Yeah. There's a video about it. I mean, it's unbelievable. Yeah. So that's exciting to me, and it without a doubt. But to me, that still gets back to the work-life balance, because go read a book on this topic. Yeah. Watch a video about work-life balance, because there's actually a process to achieve it. You can actually take proactive steps in your life to do it. And I always say, like, I'm not pretending by any stretch to have it all figured out, but I do try to make progress in these departments and try to make sure that I am balanced. And again, there's plenty of time I go off the rails.
I think that's where we end this series, because I think you just hit on what I hope for those of you that are watching is this idea of making progress. Every day in every way, make progress. For me, it's about having high standards, and I challenge you guys to raise your standards. Whatever your standards are right now about mind, body, spirit, the connection you have with loved ones, I want you to raise your standards in each of those areas.
I would love to make one more comment. One of the best ways to do that, and I think we almost touched on it in the last video, is the idea that put the right people around you and literally cast off the people who bring you down. Yeah. That is the number one way to raise your game. The reason that we're both sitting at this table, and we've said it in plenty of episodes already, is because we raise each other's game and we actually hold each other to higher standards. My other business partners in my other companies are the same way. Yeah. Put the people around you who care about you, who are going to actually have a positive influence in your life, who will challenge you to be a smarter person and make you learn every day. I don't think there's almost anything more important you can do on a daily basis, but put the people around you
Yeah.
that support you, not that drag you.
Agreed. Believe in you guys. Love you. Take care. Peace.